Back again. Right, welcome to part 2 of making my small table. I'm on the Hegner fret saw, and I'm going to do the cutout pattern for the cat. Now, before you start cutting, it's a good idea, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, to check first and see which bits to cut first. Obviously, it's quite a simple thing to cut out this. There's one hole there, because that will cut the main part of all of the bulk of the cutout will be done through that one hole, so that's quite straightforward. And there's some smaller ones here. When you're doing it, choose which order to do it in. Obviously it's better, in my opinion anyway, to do the smaller cutouts first, the least delicate ones, because they're least likely to get damaged. What you don't want to do is to do, say, the cutouts on the main part with, for example, the tail there, which is a fairly delicate part, and then have to manhandle the thing while you're doing the other cutouts. So I always do the less important ones first, the less delicate ones. Obviously, the cat's tail is a bit delicate. You have to be careful when you're cutting that. So that whole piece there will be done last. So to start with, I shall concentrate on this little piece here. Now, another thing that concerns some people when you're using a fret saw is whether to stand or sit. Now, actually, I do either. At the moment, I'm standing because I'm filming, and it's a bit awkward sitting down and having the camera alongside me, so I should do it standing up. Generally speaking, I do sit on a fairly high chair. I've got an old office chair I use, and it's more comfortable if you're doing a lot and you can relax more. But you can equally do it standing up. It's up to you, really. Pays your money and takes your choice. This is a number 5 blade I've got in here. It's a reverse tooth blade, which will give a clean cutout on the back. Funny thing is, since I've been doing these videos, which isn't long, I've not yet had a blade break whilst filming. And in a way, I wish I had, because it would demonstrate what happens when the blade breaks. Because if you're used to fret sawing, you will know what happens. It makes you jump out of your skin, because the top arm of the saw is spring loaded, so that if a blade snaps, the arm shoots back out of the way and lifts the blade off the work. The reason for that is, if the blade does break, if it continued to oscillate like it normally does when the blade isn't broken, if it broke and the thing continues to oscillate and you've got your hands in the way, the broken part of the blade could easily hit your hand and puncture your hand, or it could damage the top of the work. So what happens with most saws is, or proper saws, this arm has got a spring at the back, and it springs the arm up out of the way, so it's harmlessly out of the way. The only trouble is when it does it, it goes off with a loud bang, and it scares the hell out of me. It always, I mean, for donkey's years I've been doing fret sawing, and every time that blade breaks, it almost gives me a heart attack. It always makes me jump out of my skin practically. So if it does happen when I'm filming, and I don't come straight back on, you know what's happened. So hopefully it'll be alright this time. Anyway, we'll turn the saw on, enough rabbiting, and I'll attempt to cut this small piece out here and see how we get on. I've got the saw going fairly fast. I'm going to cut into this line here and try and cut a fairly straight. I'll try and remember to keep my hands out of the way, but it's not easy. Try and get a nice sweeping curve. I'm going into that corner, and I shall stop there and back the saw up. I'm not going to attempt to go around there. So what I'm going to do now is back the saw up into the hole, spin it round, back the saw back in there, and then continue that straight cut as best I can. I didn't cut that very well actually, because I should have gone in at a less sharp angle, right angle really, to the line. Was better, but never mind, it will suffice. There's another sharp corner there, so I'll have to stop there, and again I should go back. And now I've got to pick a point on the design here where to enter. It's always good, if you can, to try and pick a natural point. For example, there, the cat's bottom, there's a mark there, so if I go in across there and then attack it from that angle up round there, and I can back off and go down that way. You don't want to go on a straight line unless you have to. So what I'll do, I'll go in here. There's already a junction there anyway. So it doesn't matter if it deviates. You see what I mean? That corner I can go around easily. There we go. I've missed a bit there, but that's soon. to. Now I go back round and cut this other piece. Not very good that bit, but it won't show. There we go. One thing I should mention, when you're cutting a pattern out, if you do go off the line and start to move, don't worry too much. Don't go back and try and correct it. That's probably the worst thing you do. The best thing you can do is to just try keep the blade in a nice sweeping curve and try and get it back on the line as soon as you can. And often it won't show where you've deviated. You can incorporate it into the pattern. I'll just take the blade out and put it in another hole so that you can see how easy it is with a Hegner fret saw to change the blade over. Some saws, they've got a different mechanism, and it is quite annoying. I mean, they may work fine, there's no problem there, but it's so annoying if you've got a pattern. I mean, one I did not so long ago had 130 of these cutouts to saw through, and you can imagine changing the blade over every few seconds, it drives you nuts. Whereas this system, you just pull that, I mentioned this before, you just pull the lever back to release the tension, turn the knob, blade comes out, you pop it in the next hole like so. It goes through, there we go, and then it's a simple matter of popping the blade back in, keep your finger on to hold the top arm down, hold the blade up, tighten the blade in the clamp, this is the Hegner quick clamp, put the tension back on again, and away you go. I'll just do this next bit. I don't need to be too fussy with this because it's barely going to show anyway, this cutout. It's underneath the tabletop and people won't look at it very closely, so if I make any mistakes it will barely show. Go into that corner, I'll have to back off from that point, so I'm going to go back now. I'll just take the saw into the centre hole again, use the saw to chuck the piece out, and I can approach it from the other side round here. Right, that's another one done. Another thing to remember when you're cutting a pattern out, it's easy to just follow the lines and cut the pattern out and not think about it, but really what you want to do is look at the whole pattern and consider it. For example, this line here needs to be exactly the same as this line. Visualize a line going along there and try and keep it as straight as you possibly can. It's quite easy when you're sawing to forget the whole pattern and just cut the piece you're doing it and ignore this, but you've got to really be looking at this. So in other words, if you cut that line perhaps a little bit higher, try to accommodate it in the next piece, because if they're at a step, that piece will show it. If that was down here somewhere and that one was up there, you would notice a difference, because that's obviously the floor of the pattern there. So you need to try and get it a nice straight line, and you always want to try and do that if you can. I'll just release the blade again. I'll just pop it in there. I think we'll stop the film in there because you've seen enough of that anyway. A lot of people don't realise just how useful a scroll saw or fret saw is in general woodworking. I use mine a lot for all sorts of things like cutting dovetails and joints and things. It's brilliant for box combing, for example, if you haven't got a machine to do it. This is quite reasonably thick. I mean, you can do much thicker than this. I mean, 1 inch, inch and a quarter is no problem, and it's much more versatile than a bandsaw. I've got bandsaws, but they're the devil to cut sharp corners with, and this fret saw, you can do anything with it. It's a really marvellous machine. It's the one machine in my workshop I'd really miss. And it's the best machine to use. It's the machine I most like using. Okay, well, I think I'll end it there. I'll do this bit off camera because most of this is fairly straightforward anyway, and then when I come back I'll show you what I do with the rest of the table. Bye for now.